All right. So this video is just a comprehensive review on cocktails because when you're working in service, so where I'm coming from, the Blacksburg Wine Lab, knowing what cocktails are, what spirits they use, what liqueurs they use, and what other mixtures are needed, and having a general idea on how we make them goes so far in selling these cocktails. And more so, it makes it just so much more efficient. So if someone's asking for a specific cocktail, you can know, like, yeah, we have the ingredients, we can make that. It's not just some random cocktail that they got from TikTok and obviously it's not for a mainstream bar or a wine bar like us to, really take care of. So this is just a comprehensive video. What cocktail has what? What do I put into the computer to order it? And what can we do? And basically, how can I make myself be better? So here's that video. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. This should be, let's see, this. Let's figure it. All right. We were able to figure it. I just had to go to advanced settings. Okay. So you should be seeing my screen right now. Perfect. So I have these little glasses that I made up here that I actually made just using this tool on GoodNotes. So hopefully they're useful. But these are the main ones that I'll be using. This is just a standard martini glass right over here. This is martini. This can be a rocks glass. So you would see this in like an old fashioned or a margarita or our Moscow Mule. This is going to be a highball or Collins glass. And we use like some Long Island iced teas, some rum punches, whiskey highballs, which I'm going to get into. And there's a little bit more niche. There's going to be a coupe glass, which serves kind of the same purpose as the martini glass. And before I kind of get into the different liquors, note that these have a stem. So when cocktails have a stem, that kind of means that they're very pure, and we use the term up, right? Just because it's farther away from the person's hands, whatever warmth comes from your hands won't interact with the liquor or the alcohol at all. And that's kind of a strategy for like wine people, right? From classes that we will hold the wine glass, like cup this bottom part onto our hands just to warm it up and wake it up a little bit. For these cocktails, that's not really the case. Like if we have a martini, the point is to have the martini, stirred, chilled, a little diluted. We don't want to warm it up a little bit because we like really cold cocktails. And that's the purpose of these, okay? So again, we'll get into it, but just so you kind of know what glassware is doing what. So the first thing we have to get into before we get into any kind of spirit is going to be the first major popular cocktail. It's the king of all cocktails is going to be the martini, right? And you've heard martinis. I want it like dirty, extra dirty. God forbid I have someone order a filthy martini, which is a little gross. Dry martini. I want it up, lemon twist, all that. We're going to get into it. Or, shaken, not stirred, like in James Bond. That's what a martini is, okay? So for a martini, the first thing that should go into your head when you're taking an order for a martini is what spirit do they want? And the first things that should be coming to mind is going to be vodka. Let me see if I can make this text a little thicker. Vodka or gin. This is one of the cocktails that has a little bit of variety. Most other cocktails, they have a specific spirit, like a margarita. It uses tequila, not whiskey. Or a gin and tonic, it uses gin, not whiskey. But for a martini, either one could work, a vodka martini or a gin martini. But for us, martini is going to be an umbrella term for all of these, and most people usually like vodka martinis. But a good amount of people still order gin martinis. Personally, I like gin martinis. Gin's going to be a little bit of a more botanical spirit. The main component of gin is going to be universally a juniper flavor. It's not distilled grain, it's going to be distilled botanicals. But vodka is going to be more dilute. This is just going to be dilute and flat grain, right? And vodka is probably the most popular spirit for cocktails because it doesn't taste like anything. So you can make so many wild drinks, and the moment you put vodka in it, it won't interact that much with the taste, but it'll definitely get you hammered. And that's the point of vodka. But for martini, we kind of play around it with it a little bit because there's usually other stuff that go into it. Okay. So For martini, we want to look at vodka or gin. So the moment you are able to decide which spirit that they want, now you have to look at a spectrum, right? So for the spectrum, I'm going to do it like this. We're going to do very dry, dry, and dirty. This is how I like to look at it. This is our baseline zero. Okay. These are the two spectrums of martini. You either want it really dirty or really dry. And what does this mean? Well, dirty just essentially means olive juice. Some people love olives and they just want it in some liquor. So they want it dirty. But when they want it to be dry, that's when we use a dry vermouth, right? Vermouth is its own class of liqueur, and I believe, to my knowledge, it's in the umbrella term of like wine-based spirits. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. For you guys, don't worry about it, all right? But right now, when we're talking about martinis for the spectrum, we're looking at olive juice or vermouth, okay? So when they want it dirty, we're only going to use a small amount of olive juice. And when they want it very dirty, we're going to put a lot of olive juice. When they want it dry, they only want like a small amount of dry vermouth. And that's pretty much the standard. If someone gives me a martini, they don't tell me otherwise, I'm going to go with a slightly dry martini. That's the standard. However, they want it very, very dry. We do the smallest amount of vermouth. They are weird and they really just want to taste a chilled, diluted spirit. Sometimes I get it. Sometimes I like it that way. Like I just want to taste my Monkey 47 gin very, very dry. I don't want to taste much vermouth. Sometimes that's a move, sure. But again, this is what we should be looking at. These are the main tier levels you're going to be looking at. So let's say that this is a very dirty gin martini. Let's say they use Hendrix, okay? On the right, we just use a normal dilute dry martini, okay? When things are dirty, the most common garnish we're going to have is an olive pick, right? That makes sense? Sometimes we do three, sometimes we do one. If it's very dirty, we'll do three. If it's slightly dirty, we might go three or one. It kind of depends on our olive stores. If people ask for extra olives, we don't hand out free olives, right? We have mixed olives on the actual menu. They can order it themselves. So three olives is how much we're going to be giving them. And if it's dry, we can still put an olive on a pick in a dry martini. Sure, there's not a lot of juice on that actual olive to actually impact the flavor too much. But a very common garnish we have for a dry martini is going to be lemon twist, and that's what people say with a twist. So it's just going to be a lemon peel, right? So let's break it down. If I'm actually going to go with my normal order for martini if I want one. I would like my martini with the botanist gin dry up with a twist. And that basically means, okay, I told you my spirit, so I know I'm gonna have a gin because I told you the botanist gin is gonna be a pretty balanced gin. I want it dirty, so we're not gonna have any olive juice. It's gonna be a small amount of dry vermouth. Up, which standard is like, you know, I'm not gonna come up with an analogy at the moment, but up just means, it's in a martini glass with a twist, meaning there's going to be lemon twist. So I like my gin martinis with 3 ounces of gin, 0.25 to zero point 0.5 ounces of dry vermouth, no olives at all, with a peeled lemon. And that's our martini. This is the perfect segue to go into vodka. Again, our most versatile spirit. So for vodka, the main things that we're going to be dealing with, let me go ahead and copy one of these, are a few cocktails. We're going to do martini variants and a cosmopolitan. So for vodka, the main thing you want to order or look out for when someone orders a vodka cocktail is what kind of vodka do they want, right? Do they want excuse me, a potato-based vodka? So there's going to be our well vodka or the Cirrus or Tito's or a grain-based vodka, which is everything else. So that's going to include Kettle One, right? Grey Goose. These are the types of vodkas that we carry at the Blacksburg Wine Lab. So for a cosmopolitan, that's just going to be vodka, cranberry juice, Cointreau, and Cointreau is just going to be an orange liqueur. We don't use a whole lot of it. And then lime juice. It's going to be shaken and it's going to be poured double strain because we want it, kind of neat up on top. And the main thing you want to look out for is what type of vodka do you want? That's the only thing. The rest, leave to us bartenders, okay? And this is going to be a nice, pretty pink color. The other variants are going to be, or the other vodka cocktails are going to be not espresso, martini variants. That includes espresso martinis, lemon drop martinis, chocolate martinis. These are the three martini variants that we do, in fact, do at Wine Lab. Again, you just have to find out what spirit that they want. And most of the time for a martini variant that they want our well vodka or our Cirrus. And if they're okay with that, then you just type it in the actual instructions. We can give you instructions on how much to upcharge depending on what spirit that they want. But for a lemon drop martini, this is just going to be a sweet lemony martini. A chocolate martini is going to be just we use a chocolate liqueur, vodka, and maybe some sweetener. And then espresso martini, we're going to use an actual pre-made mix. So we actually use concentrated cold brew. So at Blacksburg Wine Lab, we don't have an espresso machine. When an order orders 8 espresso martinis at a time, it will take so much longer to actually brew the 8 espressos needed. So we just have a cold brew concentrate. We pre-make the mix and then we just shake it up and it comes out really quick. It doesn't impact our traffic. It's a busy Friday night. We can focus on other cocktails, on 5 other tickets rather than 8 espresso martinis, which is a little obnoxious to make, but hence we have the process. Cold brew concentrate, it tastes really good. It's still really nice. And we use a little bit of Wonder Foam just to get some froth and it is phenomenal. It's beautiful. I'm gonna go with this. Okay. The other ones, we are going to do a Moscow Mule. So Moscow Mule is another type of cocktail that we do. Moscow Mule, we have a house Moscow Mule, which is going to be our most popular cocktail. That's going to be our Maroon Mule. Our Maroon Mule is basically just a Moscow Mule, but mixed in with a pomegranate, pomegranate and hibiscus sangria. Right, Moscow Mule is going to be using, vodka, lime, and top it off with ginger beer. Okay. Top it off with ginger beer. And a Moscow Mule, it's the same thing that we normally do or a Maroon Mule is going to be the same thing as a Moscow Mule, but with that sangria. And we can still do Moscow Mules. Just ring in, again, like a Cirrus vodka. They want it as a Moscow Mule. We can do that easily. Vodka, lime, ginger beer. We have all of it. All of it's still used for the Maroon Mule. The other one are going to be, or the other cocktail that you should make note of are Russians. A black Russian is just going to be a coffee, liqueur, and vodka. We can do that. A white Russian is going to be the same thing as a black Russian. So, white Russian is going to be coffee, liqueur, vodka, topped off with cream. And I will say, do not do the white Russian. All right, do not put it in, say that we don't have it. As for the Blacksburg Wine Lab, we cream-based liqueurs are not our style. With cream-based cocktails are not our style. We have some cream-ish cocktails like Bailey's and chocolate liqueur. Those might be it because they have alcohol in it. Longer shelf life, we refrigerate them. They can stand in the fridge for even up to a year. We go through it enough that they are never there that long. But for an actual cream, like white whipping cream, we don't want to set the precedent. Do not ring in the White Russian, okay? politely say we can't offer that. And they're asking why. We don't carry cream behind the bar. Not enough people order cream-based cocktails. Okay. Now, vodka out of the way, let's get into gin. And before we get into gin, we should probably get into the golden ratio. And the golden ratio, again, most of this is just so you know what's going on, is talking about a 2 to 1 to 1 ratio of main ingredients. That's going to be spirit, a syrup, so like simple syrup, and lemon or lime juice, right? This ratio is really important for most of the cocktails. And as we trudge along further, this will make more sense. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. For gin, the most common thing you're going to run into is a gin and tonic. Gin and tonic. Again, we have buttons for this. Just get what type of gin that they want. The most popular ones are going to be Hendrick's, Tanqueray, or our well gin, any of them. But we just do 2 ounces of whatever gin, put some lime juice in it. Not even like a whole lot. We just squeeze the lime into it and then we top it off with tonic. These are really easy, very refreshing. I love gin and tonics. Next one is going to be a Negroni. A Negroni is also going to be a gin-based cocktail, but is going to be red. And the red comes from Campari. Let's do a nice big block of ice. All right. If you guys know what Aperol is, you know what Campari is. Campari is pretty much the same thing as Aperol. It's going to be a little bit more bitter, not as sweet, but it's still an aperitif, just like Aperol. Not to say that you can use Aperol in a Negroni because it's so rooted in tradition. If you use Aperol, you're gonna get some weird looks. So we're using Campari, whatever gin that they want, and then we use sweet vermouth. This is in a 2 to 1 ratio, 2 to 1 to 1 ratio. Okay, that's a Negroni. Again, the main thing you're looking for is what type of gin do they want? What type of gin do they want? We also have French 75. French 75 is going to be in a flute glass where we shake up gin, lime, actually, excuse me, lemon, and simple syrup. Again, in a 2 to 1 to 1 ratio. We shake it up, we pour it in, and then we top it off with Prosecco or any other sparkling wine would suffice. And then we actually use a lemon twist top. So let's make this a little pretty. There you go. With a lemon twist on top. That's a French 75. And again, the main thing you want is gin. And if they're asking you what kind of Prosecco do you use, say we use St. Kilda. St. Kilda. Whoops. That's going to be a Brut Cuvée. Now we are getting into some of the more unique cocktails. We have an aviation. All right. An aviation is going to be a gin-based cocktail that uses creme de violette and luxardo. It's going to be purple. Gin, creme de violette, and luxardo liqueur. And that's going to be like a cherry-ish flavor. All right. With my aviations, I do like a little cherry with a little twist, like a little luxardo cherry. To each their own. This is how I like my aviations. All right. Again, just know what gin that they want. Now we get into a south side and a gimlet. Okay? And both these I standardly will use coupe glasses. Okay? So for a gimlet, Think of this as a gin daiquiri. Kind of formatted this a little weird. That might have been smarter to do rum first to understand a daiquiri. The daiquiri is just going to be 2 parts rum, 1 part lime, 1 part simple syrup. Shake it up, pour it. A gimlet's going to be the exact same thing, but with gin instead of rum. So we're going to use gin, lime, and simple syrup in a 2 to 1 to 1 ratio. And these are going to be in ounces, by the way. Okay? Again, 2 to 1 to 1 ratio. It's going to be a gimlet. Actually, let's keep it as like a nice yellowish gimlet. Okay? For a south side, think of it as like a gin mojito. Think of it as a gin mojito. We use gin, lime, simple syrup, and shake it with mint leaves. But here at Wine Lab, we actually use a mint syrup. Oops. We pre-make mint syrup where we make simple syrup, steep it in mint just to draw out some more green, some more flavor. And this just makes the process so much easier. We get a richer mint flavor and it makes our cocktails bomb, basically. And that's at the south side. That's just going to be a gin mojito, basically. Okay. And now we get into tequila. Tequila. So apart from vodka, tequila is probably going to be the most popular cocktail spirit. All right. People love taking tequila shots in margaritas and in palomas and all of this. And we're going to get into it. Okay. So the two main cocktails that you mainly have to deal with are going to be margaritas and palomas. Okay. Let's get these. So for a margarita, we're going to do 2 ounces of tequila. Whoops. 1 ounce of lime and 1 ounce of simple syrup. But for us, instead of the simple syrup, we actually use agave syrup. Again, agave is like the simple syrup, but instead of actually just straight up sugar and water, agave is going to draw out more of that blue agave flavor. So we just really highlight the flavor of tequila. And for our margaritas, we actually split up the agave by doing zero point 0.5 agave and 0.5 Cointreau, which is actually essential for margaritas. Um, yes, so this is like our 2 to 1 to 1 ratio, but the last one between our for our simple syrup is going to be split up between agave and Cointreau. Okay, and that's going to be a margarita. Let me do a nice little orange peel. You like to have orange peels on the side for margaritas. And maybe just to make it a little prettier, just a nice little like black salt rim. Again, there's a button for margaritas. You don't have to worry about it. For Paloma, we use tequila, grapefruit juice, lime, and agave. Okay. And we actually have a house Paloma, the chili water. And our chili water actually uses a mezcal that's steeped in Serrano infused or Serrano peppers instead of tequila just to get a spicier and smoky flavor, hence the chili water. Okay. And grapefruit is going to be a very nice addition to tequila because in addition with the lime, the acidity really mends well with the tequila, making a really nice cocktail. And that grapefruit gives it a nice, beautiful pink hue, Paloma. And I usually like to top it off with a lime wheel. Okay, sweet. Yeah. And then we should probably get into the different types. So you've heard Blanco, Mezcal, Añejo. Asado. So even though for tequila-based cocktails, these are the only main two you should, kind of deal with, you also have different types of tequilas. And I have had multiple cases where people come up asking for specific types of tequila. I would like a shot of your best reposado or your smokiest mezcal. And this is a perfect opportunity to stop sharing my screen and actually move on to this. Okay. So first off, apart from the rest, mezcal is a type of tequila that's going to be very smoky, right? Think of it as like the scotch of tequilas. So mezcals are going to be really tasty by itself when it's chilled. You're going to get a nice punch at the back of your throat. Some people really savor it, and when you've had enough, you can look past that initial flavor and really appreciate certain notes in it. But for the other types of tequila, silver or blanco is just going to be your basic white tequila. This is the one that most people take shots with and what we use in the well to make cocktails. If I'm going to make you a margarita or a paloma, I'm going to use a silver one. The other two are going to be darker, reposado and añejo. They're going to be darker types of tequila that we can use in some cocktails if they want. But most of the time, people want these other types of tequilas to drink by itself, as a shot to sip on. Some people are crazy about their liquor, and we're here at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we're here to serve them. Okay, so these are the types of tequilas, and those are the main four you should know. All right, blanco slash silver, reposado, añejo, and for those two, you only have to know they're darker. They have their own flavor profiles. And last of all, mezcal, which is going to be a very special smoky tequila that we do offer. We have very smoky ones. We have ones we use in cocktails, stuff like that. Okay, let's go back to this. Zoom. There we go. And now let's get into rum. So the main thing you have to know about rum cocktails are the tiki cocktails. And by the time of recording this, we finished Tiki Week already. Tiki Week at the Blacksburg Wine Lab, or Tiki Takeover, is supposed to be a week of getaway where right before a spring menu, we kind of give people, a sense of paradise, of summer, of longing. It's an entirely like just a fun thing because not a lot of places in Blacksburg sell tiki cocktails. And we love the opportunity to sell a bunch of tiki cocktails, have a really nice tropical vibe, and at least for a week. It's not permanent. We're not known for being a tiki bar, but it's really a really nice event to, come up with, right? And tiki cocktails are going to be mainly characterized by rum, pineapple, and coconut. Those are the main ones. So if you're thinking of main tiki one, think pina colada. Okay, we're talking about pineapple, coconut, rum, and for rum, there's even different types. You have normal white rum, right? White rum, like, Captain Morgan white rum, or you have spiced. Some dark rum, some spice, and they can be different types, different flavor profiles. So if the rum being a sugar or molasses, sugar cane based spirit, it might change the flavor profiles from molasses, a certain type of cane, and all this stuff. Okay. And it's really nice to familiarize yourself with the different brands. And going back to the main point, tiki cocktails, it's going to be just an entirely like big movement, right? It's characterized by fun, colorful, tiki totem glassware or porcelain glassware with, nice umbrellas, cherries, candy, nice little tropical animals. Again, it's just supposed to be fun, meant to remind you of the beach because you might be here on a Friday night having a really long week at work. And it's just really nice. And that's the whole love for tiki cocktails. So there's a whole community out there that just loves tiki cocktails, and you know, we love to cater to them every now and then. But the main actual tiki cocktails you're going to deal with are going to be a daiquiri, which I mentioned before in like the gimlet, where it's just a basic standard cocktail that is really good. Really, really good. Where we use 2 parts rum, 1 part lime, and 1 part simple syrup. Comes out a really nice, beautiful shade. And I always like to garnish it with a little lime wheel. That's going to be a daiquiri. Okay. And for this, you mainly just want to know what kind of rum do they want? Want dark or spicy rum? Same thing here. What kind of tequila do they want? Again, when you're putting in these orders, know what spirit that they want, and most of everything we can take care of. But again, this video is supposed to help familiarize yourself with these things. Any of the martinis. This one's pretty complex, but hopefully this kind of sums it up. Okay, the next one is going to be mojito. Mojito is probably the most popular rum-based cocktail that we're going to have. I was going to use, I've never seen a mojito use a dark rum. So most of the time, 99% of the time, you're going to be using a white rum. So 2 ounces of rum, 1 ounce of lime, 1 ounce of simple syrup. But for us, it's going to be a mint syrup plus mint leaves. And when we shake up like our south side and our mojitos with the actual mint leaves, it helps bring a lot more chlorophyll outside of the cells, gives it some green color, helps with the flavor profile with the oils and all that. The mint leaves are a very good addition. We usually have spare mint leaves on hand that we can throw in the shaker and shake it up. So don't worry about that. But a mojito is going to come out a really nice, decadent green. And usually we garnish these with mint leaves. Mint leaves. See, if you're kind of looking at the comparisons, a gimlet's like a gin daiquiri and a southside being a gin mojito. Well, here's our normal ones. A rum daiquiri is just a normal daiquiri. A rum mojito is just a normal mojito. Some of the other things we have are going to be a Long Island iced tea or a lit. Long Island iced teas are going to be rum, vodka, tequila, gin, and relatively smaller amounts of each, but it's still a very strong cocktail. Cointreau, topped off with Coca-Cola. Yes, topped off with Coca-Cola. That's going to be Long Island iced tea. And these get people hammered, but it's good to know what it is. So we can order that. Yes. And then we'll get into our last main spirit, whiskey. Some whiskeys are spelled with an E, some without, and that mainly describes where it's from, right? So where we are in America, we use the E. In other places, they might not use the E. It's a really stupid concept that you are not responsible to know about. So when we're talking about whiskeys, we have two main cocktails we're thinking of. All right. These two cocktails that I'm about to talk about should be as important as a martini in your head. Okay. So the main two that we're going to be talking about are going to be the Manhattan and an old fashioned. Old fashions are probably as popular, if not more popular, as of recent than the martini. A lot of people can appreciate just an old-fashioned cocktail. And a Manhattan is considered, or if a martini is considered the king of cocktails, the Manhattan is going to be the queen of cocktails. And it's just that popular. So for a Manhattan, let's go ahead and color it in as a nice dark drink. This is going to be most predominantly rye, but we can use bourbon. It's going to be a rye though. And ryes are going to be a little bit of a spicier whiskey. Rye grain is going to be spicy. Bourbon grain is going to actually be corn, which is sweeter. So bourbon is sweet. Rye is spicy. That's just from the main grain. Bourbon, American bourbon has to be 51% corn. American rye has to be 50% rye grain. And we can get into barley and wheat and wheated whiskey in another video. But for now, let's just focus on the main two, bourbon and rye. So for the Manhattan's going to be rye and sweet vermouth, plus bitters. And we use like 3 ounces, 0.75 ounces in our Manhattans, but we're definitely open to change the proportions as someone wants. But usually, if someone just wants to say, I want a Rittenhouse Rye Manhattan, that's all you have to ring in, go to Rittenhouse, click the button that says make it as a Manhattan. We'll take care of the rest, okay? And we like to garnish this with an orange peel. Instead of using a grapefruit pink, let me actually use an orange, okay? Now, for an old fashioned, we use bourbon, simple syrup, or demerara syrup, and that's just a brown sugar. And then we use bitters. And bitters is just like a spice cabinet for us bartenders, okay? So let me draw a nice big ice cube, kind of like a Negroni. And then let's use a highlighter just to make a nice whiskey colored drink. Yes. Yes. Okay. And this is going to be normally topped off with a cherry and then an orange peel. Okay. So when we're talking about an old fashioned, probably the most important thing you can do as a server is take a look at what spirit do they want. Do they want it as a rye? What kind of spirit do they want? Do they want a rye or do they want a bourbon? Or do they want a wheated whiskey? Again, it's up to them. Our well whiskey is going to be Rittenhouse rye, and our well rye is Rittenhouse rye. Our well bourbon is going to be Evan Williams, white label. Evan Williams white. So if they want a rye whiskey, just ring it in. If they don't care what it is. If they want a bourbon, old fashioned, we can make it just punch in the button, okay? But sometimes they might look at our whiskey shelf. I want this High West Rendezvous rye. I want this Pikesville rye. I want this Old Elk straight aged bourbon in an old fashioned. That's when you actually go to the actual spirit. You go to the spirit, you can use a search button if you need to, and then hit the button that says old fashioned, and we'll take care of the rest, okay? The other big one that we usually deal with is going to be a whiskey sour. A whiskey sour is going to be a nice, frothy, like a bright yellowish thing. And normally, normal whiskey sour orders come with or use egg whites as a frothing agent. We use Wonder Foam, kind of like in our espresso martinis. It's going to be whiskey. This is going to be simple syrup. And this is going to be lemon. Again, in that 2 to 1 to 1 ratio, plus Wonder Foam. Again, this is just a frothing agent, helps build that nice little layer of froth up top so that we can like kind of design it. And that's going to be a whiskey sour. Other whiskey-based cocktails that you might run into that we do in fact offer are going to be Vuccares. A Vucare is going to be a New Orleans, a classic Louisiana cocktail using whiskey. It's pretty niche, but some people order it and we can make it. A Boulevard, Irish coffee, that's with Irish whiskey, and going to be a whiskey highball. Whiskey highballs, this is going to be whiskey and club soda. But just to take away from this, I know this was a long video, and I really hope that you guys watched it because the main thing that you need to know when you're selling cocktails is just generally what's in what cocktail. What can I use, or what should I ask about when they're ordering it? And the main things you should be focusing on, what spirit do they want specifically? Do they want our normal spirit, cheap cocktail that we use in most of our cocktails, or do they want a specific spirit that we have behind us in the actual bar? Okay. So the main thing that you should really just make sure you study is the types of martinis, okay? What kind of, or step one, what kind of spirit do they want? Vodka or gin? Number two, do they want it dirty or dry? Extra dirty or extra dry? And then what kind of garnish? Standard garnish is going to be an olive. But if they actually want a lemon twist instead, they're going to say it. They will tell you. The other ones, just know what we have. And then also for Manhattan Old Fashioned, what spirit do they want? Do they want rye or do they want bourbon in them? They can be interchanged, but for the most part, they have their own respective niches. Otherwise, please ask us bartenders what you want. You guys are welcome to have access to this specific PDF. Okay, so hopefully this helps.